Welcome to What's in the Box, episodes of horror with Donna and Eric. I'm Donna. Eric is not joining us for this interview today, but I do have Matt Micheli with me. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great. This is the first time we've ever interacted. I have seen your name around um, on Facebook and, on the Goodreads because I have a huge TBR. So,
That's good. I'm glad you didn't say like bathroom stalls and that kind of thing because
yeah, no, not yet. I don't know. When I get to
yeah.
Texas, I'll let you know. Um, So this is another installment in our Texas AuthorCon interview, so everybody can get to know the people that will be there. Go out and check out Matt's books. If you can't make it to the event, you can always hop on Amazon. I'm sure he has things on Amazon, but we'll cover
Oh,
that
yeah.
later. So we have some little fun icebreakers, Matt. Jason, Michael, or Freddie, who's your favorite?
I've been listening to the show, so I put some thought into this. Freddie and Jason's a close one, but I'm going to go Freddie. Not
Okay.
necessarily because of Freddie himself, but my older brother, when it was dark, would I'd be like, "Hey, Anthony," and he'd be like, "I'm not Anthony, I'm Freddie," and he would do the Freddie voice. So when
Oh,
I was a kid, it scared the crap out of me. A few years later, I was more introduced to Jason, and I watched Jason in Manhattan by myself, I think is the one where he's out in New York, or Jason Takes Manhattan or something. So those two, I mean, I'll go Freddie just because that was the earliest, but Jason's very close. Michael, I love, but he came way later, and I
mm,
think it's a little more subtle in the
yeah,
suspense. As a kid, that's a tough one to get through, but the
yeah.
others are funny.
Yeah, yeah. I think that would freak me out too if my brother would be doing the Freddy Krueger voice.
Oh yeah, all the time.
That's terrifying. Now, is he older brother or younger? Did you say that?
Yeah, he's older.
Older.
Yeah,
Yep.
he's 5 or 6 years, something like that. I don't know. We don't know how old we are anymore,
Yeah, right. You get to a certain age and you're just like, I don't know. I'm still 28. I don't know what you're
Yeah,
talking about.
exactly.
All right. The next one, vampires or werewolves?
Werewolves, hands down.
Nice.
And I think first introduction to that was Silver Bullet as a
Uh,
kid with my
Great.
dad. And oh yeah, the floor shaking and stuff. I mean, that
Hmm.
was that one's still great. I'm almost able to watch that with my little girl. She's 9, so we're not quite there yet. I'm
Right.
testing the waters with some other ones, but and then the Howling was great.
Uh,
American Werewolf in London, those were all really good. Vampires are they're too. It's too sexy. It's not scary
exactly.
for the
Yeah.
most part. There's a couple out there that are really good, but overall,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I've been saying I prefer my vampires like weird, gross, and creepy. Like, I don't know if you've
yeah.
ever seen Subspecies. It's like
I
from the
have not
early
seen that one.
90s, but there's two vampires. One is like their typical good-looking, handsome man, and the other one
Sure.
is like this weird, just creepy, deformed with the extra long fingers. And, I'm like, I like
Oh
those kind
gosh,
of vampires. I like the creature looking vampires, not,
absolutely.
Brad Pitt as Lestat or Louis. Was he Louis? He was Louis. Tom Cruise
And
was
see, I
Brad
haven't I haven't
Lestat.
seen that one just because I mean Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. I mean, yeah, it's like okay, this is definitely going to be romantic. So yeah, I picked werewolves, but probably my favorite book overall of all time is Let the Right One In, and that's a vampire novel.
Okay.
But yeah, it's if they're not eating, they start to stink, and it's gross, and that's
Yeah.
more like this is a more realistic vampire. Um, but yeah, for the most part, overall, not a big fan.
Yeah. Good. Well, not good. I mean, me and Eric are team werewolf, so we've had a lot of
Nice.
werewolf people, not very
All
many
right.
vampire people. So what would you recommend to somebody for a book if they had said to you, "Hey, I'm new into reading horror"? What would you suggest that they
Um,
start with?
so I'll stay away from indie horror just because I've made a lot of friends and believe me, there's a ton of great indie horror books. I read primarily indie horror now just because there's
Me
so
too.
many great ones. I can't even keep up. But if I'm going to go more mainstream, I would go Night Shift by Stephen King, the collection of
Hmm.
shorts. A little bit of everything in there. Also, I mean, most of the movies are based off that
Yeah.
collection. But Children of the Corn in particular, I think that's I don't know if it was scary or just more creepy, but that story kept me up. And I've never read anything that terrified me.
Hmm.
You're reading it and you can kind of go through it. But that movie, I woke up in the middle of the night, couldn't sleep, and I was just happened to be reading that book, and I got to that story, and then I could not sleep. Like that was like I was up for a while, and I haven't even watched the movies because it's so creepy to me.
Yeah.
So that one hit me pretty hard. But yeah, that book's got it's a great collection. Obviously, they're all movies now,
Yeah.
so he
Yeah.
did okay with it. But
Yeah, he did. Now, do you have a favorite horror novel?
um, well, my favorite novel of all time, and I guess it's horror, is Let the Right One In.
Okay.
Uh, and that one, and again, it's a vampire story. I'm not a vampire guy, so take that for what it is. But it's just the depth of the story and the characters. There's multiple stories layered
Hmm.
on each other. And then the climax of the book, and even on the movies, they pull it off really well. The Swedish version and the American version. Just get goosebumps every time when I read that. And I've read that one a couple of times. It's a pretty big book for me anyway. But yeah, that's my favorite of all time. But and I even wrote an article for This Is Horror years ago when I used to write for them. Um, why that's the best vampire novel of all time.
Oh, nice.
So I feel pretty strongly about that one.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's a great book.
Nice. Nice. So what was This Is Horror? What was that all? I've never heard that.
This is horror. So it's a magazine. Now they're so I used to review for them. I was like an ARC reviewer. And I published some articles and different things with them. I would compare movies and books kind of thing. And I wrote for them for maybe a year or so, contributed several
Nice.
pieces to them. But they're more known now for their podcast and interviewing people. I mean, they've got Chuck Palahniuk on there. They
Oh,
get
wow.
some pretty big names on there. And I would say they're more they're horror, but there's also that hint of transgressive fiction too. So it's kind of a combo. But they've been around for years now.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
Michael Wilson, the founder, it's he and Bob Pastorella. And I don't know if you know either of those fellows.
No. No, I'll
Bob's an
have
El
to.
Paso guy, got a very strong Texas accent, and then Michael's British and a very soft British accent. So
Oh,
the two guys are together. It's a very unique
that's
combo.
interesting. Yeah, I
Yeah,
bet. I
it's
bet.
really
I'm gonna have to check them out. So
yeah,
that
they're
sounds
cool.
right up my alley. Um, so tell us about the genre that you write in. So for people who may not know your name, and want to perhaps pick up your books.
So years ago, I was a little more transgressive. Now I started focusing more on just general horror. Not extreme. Although my first novella that was released by D&T, The White, a couple of people did say it got kind of extreme at the end. Um, Not necessarily my intentions to try to be extreme, but I really want the deaths to count, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I have a lot of subtlety in there. There's not a whole lot thrown at you. I don't like shock for shock value kind of stuff. I like to kind of build and build and build, and then hit hard when it's time to, for the creature or whatnot, what have you. So I would say just general horror, and nothing, no splatter punk, any of that stuff. And I know that's really making the rounds right now.
Mm.
Extreme horror. But yeah, the newest one has been compared to It and Stephen King. So I think if you're a Stephen King fan, but you want his style in a much, much smaller version, you might enjoy my work. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because in books of horror, I've seen a lot more requests for recommendations for general horror
Yeah.
lately. And I think that is because Splatterpunk Extreme has been so prevalent in the last year or two, I think.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so it's good to know. I'm always trying to think of um, other authors that don't write, more extreme stuff. So I'll definitely be able to recommend you now when I see those recommendations because I'm always on there recommending stuff. So
Awesome. And you consider yourself an extreme horror. Is that
yeah, yeah,
okay?
Yeah, for sure.
Uh,
Kind of erotic horror, extreme horror. It depends on what
okay,
piece you read.
sure,
So, yeah,
but it has its moments.
it definitely does have its
Yeah,
moments.
my concern with extreme is, I mean, eventually extreme is just kind of baseline. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So like things are getting, it's like you got to keep going and keep going and keep going. So I just decided, I was like, I don't want to take that path. I'm not trying to necessarily shock my readers. I'm just going to give them a good story, and yeah,
Yeah.
we'll go from there. But
Yeah. I've really actually lately I've been getting into reading more transgressive fiction.
okay,
Um, I've just recently discovered and I'm like, this is really great stuff. So do you have a favorite transgressive novel that you would
I
recommend
do.
to
I do. My favorite writers are Bret Easton Ellis,
okay.
followed by Chuck Palahniuk, and those two kind of I go between those two. And I know they're more mainstream, but Chuck was kind of the guy that, I guess, he kind of introduced more extreme horror within his stuff, like the gross out stuff and just the over descriptive things that make you vomit kind of thing. And then Bret Easton Ellis is kind of more of a confused narrator style. Um, a lot of nihilism, within the pages, and just he's also a minimalist for the most part, with the exception of American Psycho, which, in my opinion, is my least favorite of his
Oh
books.
wow.
But again, it's much longer, it's much more descriptive, which makes sense for the character himself because he pays attention to all these superficial things.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, I was like, I kind of lose what makes Brett great in this novel. Everybody else loves it. I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
It's really good, but if I'm comparing his other works, but yeah, those two guys, I mean, you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
Both very
Nice.
different, but both considered transgressive.
Right. Now, when you're writing, do you have music playing?
Yes, but no lyrics. I can't do words because I get way too distracted. I've got three stations that I put onto Pandora, and I know Pandora, I probably sound old, right? Thinking how people use Spotify or something, but
Yeah, I guess. I don't
uh,
know.
but yeah, there's a band called This Will Destroy You, all instrumental, pretty awesome. So I'll put that on. There's another station I created. It's called Time Cop 1983, and it's just basically like techno style 80s
Nice.
wave stuff, all instrumental. And there's a couple other stations I have mixed in. So depending on what scene I'm writing or what feel I'm going for, I treat it like a soundtrack basically. And I treat writing kind of like I'm writing or watching a movie. So the soundtrack kind of leads
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get
goes
that. Yeah,
together.
for sure.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. Um, so do you find that sometimes if you're listening to a certain playlist or whatever, and you're writing a scene, do you switch sometimes if you're like, you know what, this music in the background doesn't fit my mood or what I'm writing, I got to turn something else on.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, because there's such a disparity between stations and style. So yeah, when I was writing the last novel, which I'm sure we'll mention here, it's set in 1986. So I went for that 80s feel, kind of throughout. But then yeah, when I get to the sad scenes, I'll switch over to the to the slower stuff. But yeah, it absolutely is a soundtrack. I know some folks can listen to heavy metal and screaming and lyrics. I can't do that.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to get into that zone, and that would take me right out of it. But
Yeah. So I see a guitar in your background in the background
yep.
there. Do you play?
Not nearly as much as I used to or would like to. But yeah, it's another hobby of mine. Of course, it's taken a backseat to writing. So most
Mm.
of my free time is spent writing, but occasionally I'll pick up the guitar and play around with it. But
I was gonna say, are you gonna bring it with you and play for the people at AuthorCon?
not a chance.
No.
I played a
Darn it.
couple of shows and that was it. And I was like, okay, no more. I'm not that good, see, so I don't want to get up there.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sure you're better than you think you are.
yeah.
Um, so what is your writing environment like? Do you have an office? Do you write in your bedroom? Do you write in your car in the backyard?
Um, so again, and kind of going back to what we were talking about a second ago. So it's hard for me to get into the zone. So I'm actually in my office right now, slash guest bedroom. It's not a huge house. But I'll come in, I'll turn the lights down. I've got my incandescents. I hate LEDs. I can't do that. Um, put on a soundtrack and kind of go from there. To write, I'm not a person that can shut the door for 20 minutes and knock out 1,000 words. Like I've got to sit there. It takes me a little bit of time to kind of get into the flow. So time is probably my biggest challenge. Now, on the other hand, editing, I've kind of gotten a process for that. So I'll write in the office. Whatever I write that day, I send over to my Kindle. I can do that anywhere. I take notes on my Kindle, and then I come back and I put those edits into the manuscript, and I kind of repeat that process. So it's kind of like a decently edited piece, that rough draft by the end of it. So there's not a whole lot for the editor to yell at me about. But it helps me catch things too. It's when you're reading it on different screens and different formats, for some reason your eyes will latch on to things that they didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so writing in complete privacy, and then reading and taking notes wherever, at the gym, coffee shop, you name it.
Yeah. Now, are you a outliner, or are you, what is it called, a pantser?
I don't know what it's called. I rarely outline. And the only time I've ever outlined is if I'm kind of stuck or I'm trying to force something. For me, I'll usually sit down with an idea of the opening scene and maybe a character or two and maybe an opening line, and that's it. So then I kind of go from there, and then I get to a point where I'm like, okay, this is starting to come together. But I always have, towards the middle of the story, I go, I don't know where this is going, how this is going to end. I don't know how I'm going to wrap it up. But that kind of makes it fun too, because you're kind of, I don't know. It sounds like a cheesy a word, but you're kind of the vessel at that point.
Mhm.
You're just kind of writing what your brain is sending you. So it's like you're reading the story at the same time. So I don't know. I prefer not mapping it out if I can help it. Again, there's value to it sometimes.
Yeah.
Some writers live by it. You may,
Mhm.
I'm not sure, but
Nope.
now, granted, I will say this: I'm writing short novellas. So if I'm going to pump out a 60,000 word novel, then an outline might come in handy.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
More characters and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in a project with another author. We're co-authoring a novella together, and it started off with the ending. And
Okay.
I messaged her and I said, "Hey, I have this great line for the end of a book. Now we need to write the book."
All right. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So
How do you end up there? You know?
yeah, how do we get to this point? We need to
Yeah.
figure that out. So yeah, that's pretty cool. The way, it's amazing, the different authors and the way that their minds all work so differently. You think, oh, you're an author, you're gonna this is how you're gonna do it. You're gonna
Mhm.
write, but it's not like that at all.
No.
Everybody is so different. Roland Bursey Jr. does a lot of writing at work on his
Oh,
phone.
wow. Oh, wow.
And I'm like,
Wow.
I
Yeah.
could never do that.
Oh, no,
Like,
that would frustrate the hell out of me.
yep,
Trying to
yep,
type on the phone. Oh, man.
yep, for sure. Absolutely. So how many books have you published?
That I want people to know about. Won't mention the ones from many years ago when I was a terrible writer and somehow magically got published. Um, Still haunting me to this day. Right now, I've got the three novellas. I've got The White by D&T Publishing. That one came out December of last year. I released a novella called Scratched on my
Hmm.
own in March. And that's a little chupacabra, basically tearing up the Real Housewives type people,
I
Hollywood
think I
society.
actually have that on my Kindle.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
It's really cool cover by Don Noble. It's pink with the legs sticking up and it's claw mark. Really neat.
Yeah.
And then the newest one, 2 Minutes with the Devil, which I'm most excited about. That one actually went to pre-order today, so folks can grab it from Amazon starting today. And that comes out fully on June 2nd. So,
June 2nd. Yep.
man.
Nice. Yeah. So I was looking at your Goodreads page. If it's on your Goodreads page, I'm probably going to find it and I'm probably going to read it.
Oh,
So all those old ones
yeah.
that you
I'll tell you the ones, like, stay away from all of the ones except these three.
nope,
Yeah.
no can do, not anymore.
You
When you
know, when I first got into writing, and I call it the new writer syndrome, and I've talked to publishers and other people about it, because they'll say, I sent them suggestions for edits, and they said, I'm crazy, don't know what I'm talking about. And I go, I was there once. You're like, when you first start writing and you get your first publication, you're it's just like this. I don't know. I was young, but very arrogant. I was like, oh man, I'm great. I got published. I'm brilliant. Everything I write's perfect. So then they come back with edit suggestions and I'm like, no, none of it, So the book's a total train wreck. So I don't know how to write, trying to sound like Chuck Palahniuk and I'm doing an awful job of it. And then later you kind of go into the low self-esteem thing, like, am I good enough? And then it's that waiting and, just hoping for a few acceptances here and there. So yeah, the overconfidence in the beginning, it takes a dip. But I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like a roller coaster, but some of that might be just maturing with age too. I was mid-20s, and getting a book published, I thought I was awesome,
Yeah. So you mentioned it was Scratches that you self-published, right? You said
Scratched, yes, ma'am. So that one I
Scratched,
self PC3 edited it.
Oh.
Don Noble designed the cover, and I kind of built a relationship with those guys. And I I like to think I'm a fairly loyal guy. So when I build a relationship, I like to continue to work with them and kind of get a feel for each other. But no, both great guys, and the book turned out great, and it's a lot of fun.
Now, I know your The White was published by D&T, and then your newest release is coming from D&T.
Yes, ma'am.
What did you think was easier process, self-publishing or being published by D&T?
I mean, obviously, D&T is going to get the book edited. They're going to get it formatted. They're going to provide cover work for the most part. So financially, it's obviously a better deal when a publisher is paying for all that, and it makes it easier. I don't know how many cuss words I threw at my computer trying to format a short story to release on Kindle. And every time it's like it's just right, and then it's just off. And I'm like, my gosh, what am I doing here?
You add a period, and you got 29 new pages.
Yes, yep. So I learned my lesson there. So if I do self-pub, I'll have it formatted professionally, and I'll pay a little bit of money to do it. So which is what I ended up doing with Scratch. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna have it formatted and everything, because I battled the computer, and I'm talking to other authors, and they're like, oh no, believe me, I've broken computers over this same thing. Like it's just get somebody to format it for you and move on.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, it's always good to have a publisher behind you, somebody that's going to support you and market you and everything. So I mean, if you can go publisher if you can. Suggestion. But
and D&T is great. Dawn is great. She's always a champion for her authors.
She is. And that's again, having books published many years ago. Again, nightmares that are still haunting me. I got to see the insides of bad publishing and bad business. So going from that to the new indie publishers like D&T, there's a few other good ones out there too, several actually, but just thinking off the top of my head. But going and actually seeing people that are doing business the right way, it's really nice. I think right now, and I always say it's kind of we're in like the rebirth of indie horror, I think. And a lot of it has to do with the folks that are willing to publish indie horror.
Yep.
And take a chance on us. But yeah, it's a great period for we little indie horror writers, for sure.
It is. I mean, as someone, I read 99% indie horror.
Yep. I'm right there with you.
That's basically all I read. And I come from reading Stephen King and Dean Koontz, and I read a lot of different genres. Sure. Like I'll read like James Rollins or Preston and Child. So I read romance, all kinds of stuff. But I've really found that the indie authors are, I don't even know how to phrase it, but it makes me feel better to support somebody who I know put their heart and soul into this book. Not saying sure. Stephen King didn't put their heart and soul and put his heart and soul into his books. And I'm sure, when he first started out, his very first book, he was, not a big name, but you look at a Stephen King book and it's got thousands and thousands of reviews and people are, talking about it every day. But then you have, yourself or Eric. And I'm like, these are really great books that people should be talking about.
Sure.
you know?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot in the indie horror world now for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, if I can touch on what you said about you can tell that we love what we're doing. I always tell my wife and everybody else that this will never be a job. If I'm making money on it, great. But as soon as it becomes a job, or I feel like I've got to hit these deadlines and I start to stress out like in a work type environment,
Yeah.
then that's it for me. Because this is fun for me. This is my release. It's my hobby, my passion.
Hmm.
I'm gonna keep it that way. I'd love to get rich, but it's still gonna be my hobby. Like,
Yeah.
so I'll be pretty when if I get a big time publisher, they're like, you got to put out 3 books this year. I'm probably gonna say no, maybe one. I don't, let's
Yeah. Yeah.
talk about that. And really disappointing thing. I forget the name of the book, but it had a lot of different horror authors and writing advice. And it might have been from Crystal Lake Publishing, but there was an article from or an interview with R.L. Stine, who wrote all the Goosebumps books, obviously very
Hmm.
famous author. And he asked him about the joy of writing, and he said, "There is no joy. It is a job for me, 9 to 5. I've got to put out a certain amount of words in books." And it was just like there was no love to writing
Wow.
at all. And I just made a commitment to myself. I'm never going to get half that far as he has, where it becomes something almost, he almost sounded like he resented it
Yeah.
eh, during that interview. I go, that's disappointing. Not that R.L. Stein's the king of horror, but I mean, he's a very well known author.
He's an icon,
He's
really.
an
Yeah.
icon. Yeah. So to actually read that and him say nothing about loving it or anything and saying, no, it's a grind, I think is the term he used. It's 9 to 5 grind.
Wow.
Wow, that sounds fantastic.
Right? Yeah. That's really depressing
It
for
is.
him,
Yeah, I'm
for
sorry to
him.
put that on
Yeah.
you, but see how that really resonated with me. It's like it stuck with me. So when I talk to people about
Yeah.
this issue, I go, yeah, check this out. R.L. Stein hates it. It's like,
Yeah.
don't be that guy. Don't turn into that.
Yep. Yeah. Another thing about, being traditionally published is a lot of times the authors sometimes don't have a lot of say in what they put out.
Absolutely.
Um, and so, you're getting told you have to change things or, you have to include things or take things out. Indie, yes, there are guidelines, like D&T has guidelines on what material they will accept, but
Yep.
they're not telling you, oh, we'll take your manuscript if you just take out these 5 chapters or,
Yeah.
or change these characters or, take out that scene. Um, you know, so, but when you're traditionally published, if you want that money hit in your bank account,
Yep.
you got to write what they want you to write, even if you
Yeah.
may not like it. And it's funny because I did Dicey Grenore's interview. I don't know if you are familiar with her name. She'll be,
I'm not, but I will be now.
yeah, she'll be at Texas AuthorCon, and she wrote a short, and the main character was an author, and she was traditionally published, and she had these like all these books out, but she was saying how, oh, I have to put this catchphrase in my book because that's what the publisher wants.
Okay.
And you could feel through the story that
Yeah.
the character was kind of like disgusted by that. She's like,
Yeah.
these are my stories, but I'm being told what to say, you
And
know? So,
yeah, and of course, cover work and cover design, all that stuff too. It's kind of like, hey, here's the cover for the book.
yeah,
Hope
yeah.
you
And,
like it.
I think about like Stephen King's, what was it, Joyland and Billy Summer, or I think are his two of his newest
Those
ones or
newer
something
ones,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah. And I'm like, those covers just are not
I
good.
can't even recall what they look like, and I've seen the book, so that's how good the
Yeah.
covers look. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know, man. Those covers were not good.
He'll probably still sell a few copies, but
Oh yeah, just a few, just a few. Yeah. Um, so besides now your newest release, 2 Minutes with the Devil, you'll have copies of that available at AuthorCon, right? Because it's
absolutely,
being
yeah. I'll have
realized.
copies. Yeah, I'll have copies of all
Right.
three. And I also failed to mention every Halloween I'm putting out a kind of a three short stories that kind of work together. And it's titled A Halloween Story. So I did my first one last October, and this October will be a Halloween story too. And I've already got the stories lined up. So I'll have that one. You know what? No, I won't have that one. That one will probably come out a couple months later. But yeah, I will have Scratched. I will have The White. I'll have the first A Halloween Story, and then I'll have plenty of 2 Minutes with the Devil, and I think that one's probably going to have the most the broadest appeal. So I'll have a bunch of those.
Nice.
Signed and personalized that. So.
Taking all the selfies with your readers.
That's it. Yeah. I joked. I said I'll be signing Bodily Parts too if requested. And my wife hadn't said anything yet. We'll see.
Yeah, she'll say something as you're getting ready to pack the car, but to go.
Yeah. What is this again? Where are you going? Yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing? So other than coming out to Texas AuthorCon and going up to your table, where can people find your books?
So obviously Amazon. You search my name or search the title of the books. You can go to my website, which is just mattmicheli.com. Social media, Facebook, Matt Micheli World, Instagram, Micheli World. So kind of a trend there. Email mattmicheliworld@gmail if anybody wants to reach out. But yeah, and right now the newest one is on pre-order on Amazon, but it will be available everywhere the books are sold. Yeah, I'm excited about that one. I'm
Nice.
pretty pumped up. It's getting good feedback and good praise early, so that's a big thing. So
yeah, I'm getting ready to start it. So
you haven't started it yet, Donna?
Not yet.
No, Eric asked if he could send it to you because I had sent it to him. He goes, "She's a much faster reader."
Yeah.
I said, "Absolutely, yeah, send it her way." So
yeah, I would read like 3-4 books at a time. So
I do that too, and I'm wondering, does it hurt the experience because you're bouncing back and forth different characters? But
not at all to me.
So you're a mood reader, basically. Like,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. So yeah, everybody come on out to Texas AuthorCon. It's going to be July 14th and 15th in the Dallas area. It is a free event, but in order to be eligible for the door prizes, you do need to sign up for an Eventbrite ticket, which we'll have the link in the description of this episode, along with Matt's link to Matt's Amazon page. So yeah, come on out and head over to Matt's table and grab some books.
You'll find me next to a very brazen redhead.
Oh, you're going to be next to
Jaggy.
Ruth Ann.
So we're sharing tables. So yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're interviewing Ruth Ann and Natasha tomorrow.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, she's so sweet. I met her at AuthorCon in April in Williamsburg. Ruth Ann, she's just great.
I'm hoping to make it out there next year, depending on how everything goes. But
it's a great time.
Yeah, and the Texas AuthorCon looks like it's gonna be a big deal. There's no tables left. It's gonna be a ton of talent there, and so it should be fun. They have a bar. So
yeah, that's where I'll be.
Yeah, before and after.
Yep, exactly. So thanks so much, Matt, for joining me. It's been a pleasure to get to know you, and I will be seeing you in July.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Donna.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.